not gonna lie, Marshall and Jackie, surprisingly really like them together. Well, so much for that. Yeah, so much for that. What's going on, everyone? James here with another real review and recap of Netflix's Love is Blind. Thank you so much to Netflix for giving me the chance to watch these episodes early for review. Last week, if you missed my real review and recap of episodes 1 through 5, you're going to want to go back and watch it because it's in the description below and floating around at the top of the screen. So you got no excuse. Go and watch it. Come back and let's talk even more about episodes 6 through 8, which we're going to get into today. Week 2 is officially here for Love is Blind Season 4, and it's very, very dramatic. And because it is week 2, that means our contestants who survived Mexico, no, I'm not looking at you, Arena and Zach, they're gonna go move in with one another, get a chance to live together, and it's 3 weeks until weddings, so there's basically not too much time left to figure out if you're going to stay with this man or woman or not. And trust me, there's so much to talk about, so the way we're running everything is, as usual, spoiler free in the beginning and spoiler filled discussion at the end. And yes, there are time codes below if you want to skip to your favorite section. But y'all, before we get into it, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I love talking about movies, TV, and all the news in between. So if you do too, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button for more videos just like this. And get loud down below in the comments and let me know, do you think a certain couple survives? And that certain couple is one we'll talk about when we get to the spoiler section. It might be in the thumbnail. Alrighty guys, so let's now get into my spoiler-free thoughts on episodes 6 through 8. And right at the top of the list for me is there were a lot more ups and downs in this week of episodes. And I'm not talking about the drama. I'm talking about my interest levels. Sometimes I was really into it and sometimes I wasn't. And it was really back and forth compared to week 1. But I will say, this week of episodes ended on a stronger note than last week's. To be honest, I'm not like the biggest Zack fan in the world, so last week when it ended on that note of Bliss and Zack meeting, I was like, alright, it's fine. But this week, the way it ended, I'm like, there are some ramifications for week 3. But honestly, there were some moments where I was bored. Sometimes the couples were just doing things that we have seen before in Love is Blind. There were some tropes here in week 2 that we've seen in the previous 3 seasons of Love is Blind. So not the worst thing in the world, but I will say I was bored more often in week 2 than I was in week 1. And it doesn't help that the music was just awful. I feel like this is a consistent thing that we're talking about, but the music and the soundtrack choices, it was just bad. Especially in episode 8. I mean, there was a song that just kept going on and on and on. And I thought to myself, what are we doing here? This is not setting any sort of mood other than annoyed. That's my mood that this song is setting. Doesn't Netflix have enough money at this point now to license better music for Love is Blind? Come on. We're not going to get like a cheesy love song that we all know. It's all popular. I mean, gosh, he could have chosen so many good songs, especially between Brett and Tiffany. Come on. But y'all, this last point here really is that even though I'm a little bit more down on those like back and forth moments in week 2 versus week 1, the highs are higher here than in week 1 because there is some drama in this week's set of episodes. And that's especially between Jackie and Marshall. They were really the anchor for the entertainment value this week. I mean, Brett and Tiffany were safe as usual, still my favorite couple. Paul and Micah, not much there until maybe the very end of this week's set of episodes, especially when they meet a certain someone's friends. But for the most part, the drama comes in at the end of episode 7 and in episode 8. And I know I might sound like a Debbie Downer, but overall, I actually enjoyed episodes 6 through 8. A lot of my predictions for who's going to survive have changed. Some I feel more strongly about now, and others I just don't feel too strongly about anymore. But I will say, if you are invested after week 1, week 2 is a sweet payoff. So now, I want to say so much more. And you know we cannot do that unless I give a spoiler warning because y'all, in the next 15 seconds, we're diving right into my spoiler-filled thoughts on episodes 6 through 8 because I really want to talk about who's with who at this point because after week 1, everything's up in the air. Well, almost everything. We have a newly engaged couple at the end of episode 8, and that is Zack and Bliss. So they joined Kwame and Chelsea, Jackie and Marshall, sort of, question mark, Micah and Paul, and Brett and Tiffany. But how the heck did we even get there, you guys? let's talk about it right now. So let's set the table a bit. We got 21 days until weddings, 3 weeks. That means you got to live together, you got to make that mental decision, and then you got to get yourself prepped, get the tux, get the dress, get the wedding attire, everything settled, and get to the altar, and then we'll figure out who says yes or no. But again, 3 weeks left until weddings, so it's, you know, now starting to feel like a pressure situation. I'm sure Kwame feels that way, doesn't he? But the couples are now living together in Seattle, you know, whether it be in their significant other's apartment and then they swap, or in Brett and Tiffany's case, I mean, Tiffany's ready to move in like that. But some of them are also visiting other cities, like Kwame in Portland, Oregon, so they have to figure out where they want to live. It seems like Kwame's leaning towards just compromising, and we will talk about the compromising on his part very shortly. But y'all, listen, now we get the chance to talk more about Zack and Bliss. Their meeting at the start of episode 6 was that cliffhanger ending from episode 5, and well, Zack is pretty much talking himself into a hole, isn't he? Bliss is so visibly upset with him, honestly, kind of telling him, you are a bad decision maker, and how the heck am I option 2, and you're now going after me, so how can I trust you? But Zack is admitting he has bad discernment, so +1 in the self-accountability table. But he really just, Zack is an interesting character. I mean, how in the world are you feeling so strongly for Bliss now after Irina basically shunned you? Dog, did you not see that coming in the pods? I mean, we all did. So again, it goes back to him having bad discernment and awareness of situations. But in Zack and Bliss Volume 2, there's much more than meets the eye apparently, because the producers might have cut out, you know, conveniently some chunks of time, and Bliss is now at Zack's apartment and they're cooking dinner together. How and when did that happen? Bliss is sort of forgiving Zack in this moment, you know, still giving him a hard time, which she is honestly in her right to do, but Bliss said there's a vibe between them both. And as an objective viewer, yes, you can see that. There is a vibe between these two. I actually really like them in a sense together, a lot more than Irina and Zack for sure, but you can tell that they were meant to be outside of the pods. Zack, why'd you go and ruin it, bro? But I think he's trying to pick up the pieces currently. So eventually we go from the kitchen table to the big blue sea, baby. Yeah, we're on a boat. And the camera work on the boat is incredibly nauseating. So it did feel like we were literally on that boat. Seriously, I'm eating my chocolate chip cookies and I'm thinking, why? Why is this camera work almost too realistic? I don't need all this shaky cam, but I guess Paul Greengrass would be proud. However, Zack does something. He gets on one knee and proposes. Then there's a cliffhanger ending, and then we get into, I think it's episode 7. But still, this man is, he's courageous. I mean, how many weeks do you think they've even spent together at this point for them to get to that stage? But Zack gets on one knee and Bliss says, yeah, all right. So they are engaged, guys. Congratulations to the newly engaged couple. Zack said, I got you, girl. You're 1B. You should have been 1A, but you're 1B. They have a conversation about that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I just genuinely want to know, how many weeks did they even have together before this proposal? It couldn't have been more than, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks? Zack, I guess he moves quick. So now that we've gotten through the Zack and Bliss chapter, let's now get into our engaged couples and check in on each of them. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. However, with Brett and Tiffany, I have like 3 bullet points. They're the safe couple. You know what I mean? They're a healthier Joey and Carousel in terms of their consistency together. But Brett and Tiffany, mamma mia, I love them together. They are made for each other, and it reaffirms a certain point I've been hearing around the Love is Blind community, which is 30-plus-year-olds or 35-plus-year-olds are actually probably better and well primed for a show like this. So maybe they got to start casting older than casting younger, and we see that definitely with Jackie and Marshall. However, Brett and Tiffany, of course, are compatible. Tiffany's like, I cannot wait to move into your apartment, even though, you know, bougie Brett's got himself all these little knickknacks, and I don't know, but it looked cool. However, I know that when Brett met Tiffany's friends, I think that in Tiffany's mind is when it became even more real for her, because all of Tiffany's friends were incredibly approving, and you can just see the love between these two. I'm like, Brett and Tiffany, man, We love them. But from this point on, I got a lot more bullet points and notes for our couples. So let's now talk about Micah and Paul. So it starts off very awkward. Yes, this week, between them two, I'm like, oh boy. So Micah found out that Irina is attracted to Paul. There was this sort of moment between them two. They had a dinner, and it was hardly a dinner. I'd imagine they didn't do much eating because Micah was ready to shoot lasers out of her eyes at Irina. But when they met for dinner, Micah grilled Irina for having feelings for Paul. It's almost like she was venting towards Irina, and it's like, girl, we were friends, what happened? But you don't trust the snake. And Micah, I think, is done being a snake. I think she's shed her outer layer, and she is now, I don't know what's less than a snake or less snakish, but their friendship between Micah and Irina, that thing is gone. There is no friendship on the rocks, nothing. That thing has set sail. It's out of here. Irina also doesn't seem too apologetic in the cut they showed on TV, so I'm thinking to myself, maybe Irina really is the meanest girl in this season. She's villain number 1, probably. So after all of that, Paul is getting ready to introduce Micah to his mom, and oh man, mom is excited. That's right. Paul's mom is in love with Micah, and Micah seems to really like Paul's mom as well. It's really nice to see them together. It seemed very sweet. I'd imagine we probably see more of Paul's family closer to the wedding or on wedding day, but yeah, it was a pretty genuine moment. But when we get back to Paul's apartment, it seems the real conversations have begun between this couple. Micah and Paul cannot agree on a living situation. It seems like he hasn't had many serious conversations with Micah. There was this montage where they were playing footsies with one another and tickling each other's noses and stuff like that. Cutesy stuff. But it seems when it comes down to it, they can't agree on where they want to live. I think I have it in my notes here. Paul says no, absolutely not, to bouncing back and forth between Arizona and Seattle. And part of me is like, I get it. You don't want to continue to go back and forth between Arizona and Seattle. You got rain and intense dry heat. The climates don't mix, but also it's got to be taxing on them. They're going to have to compromise. They're going to figure that out. You have to imagine they'll figure that out. Or is that a seed of doubt in Paul's mind for later on? We shall see on the next episode of Love is Blind. But in all seriousness, they have some serious conversations to have. And next, we got Paul meeting Micah's parents for the first time, so it's a meet the parents. We got a lot going on here. However, it's not as easy of a dinner as it was with Paul's mom. Micah didn't even tell her parents she was engaged until that meal together. So Paul met Paul for the first time. Yeah, Micah's dad's name is Paul, but Micah's mom is not very happy about this. You can even tell during the back and forth conversation, she was a little reserved. And in the off-camera interview with her husband, of course, Micah's dad said, "I'm approve." And then Micah's mom is like, this is odd. And what did she say? She was worried that her daughter's heart would be broken. So that's another seed of doubt in Micah's mind. We got 3 seeds of doubt, and we'll get there. But boy, this is not all sunflowers and roses. Sunflowers and roses, they don't go together. Sorry, sunshine and roses. So that 3rd seed of doubt comes from Micah's best friend, Shelby. So Paul and Micah are attending her best friend's birthday, but it seems weird because all the attention seemed to be on Micah, which is odd. Imagine inviting your best friend to your birthday, you show up and it's the Micah show. I would feel a little awkward about that. But this was an awkward conversation, y'all. This was a very weird conversation. Paul, he said he don't even care about whether or not Micah's friends approve of him or not. And then he was trying to save face, but bro, you said it with your chest, okay? You said you do not care what Micah's friends think about him or about you. So I thought that was actually kind of funny, to be honest with you. But he should care to some degree because clearly Micah cares about her friends. One of them in particular, Shelby, the birthday girl. She told Micah she's not feeling Paul. Now, whether that was her or the alcohol speaking, not great because Micah took it to heart. And Shelby, again, planting those seeds of doubt in Micah's mind. So what will they do next? We'll have to figure out in week 3 because now we're moving on to our next engaged couple. Guys, and I will promise to give you my predictions of who I think will last after week 2 in this, set of episodes. But let's just say, and I'll say it right off the bat, with Jackie and Marshall, I won't even spare you. I'll save you all that time. Jackie and Marshall are not working out. I thought that they would after week 1. I thought they were so good together, but I don't see it. So let's begin with why I think that. Well, honestly, at the beginning of episode 6, it's kind of cute. You know, Marshall's cooking for Jackie and said he'd do the dishes. So go Marshall. As a fellow dishwasher myself, I approve. And then Jackie starts to let that stress creep into her a little bit. And it's kind of reminiscent of in week 1 when they were in Mexico. Jackie's really stressed about meeting Marshall's family and everything that's happening with her own family. And while I understand, actually I'll probably never understand the depths of worriment in Jackie's mind for her own family, it seems like it's actually creating a bit of a rift in between Marshall and her relationship. So I don't know, but this anxiety is coming back, and she seems like she's having another anxiety attack, which really sucked to see, because you don't want to see anyone go through an anxiety attack. But Marshall is, you know, trying to reaffirm, hey, I'm here for you. And then we find out that Jackie's family is not behind her and Marshall 100% or this experiment as a whole. But Marshall's sister said that she loved Jackie, and you know, the meeting with Marshall's family was actually kind of nice. You know, Marshall and her seemed like they were getting along better. And then eventually, I believe it's episode 7, maybe even episode 8 at this rate. I'm not sure when this happened, but I just remember the contrast was insane. We go from a happy Marshall, happy Jackie, things are going okay, to Marshall then bringing his suitcase and saying our relationship is bleak. That smacked me in the face 10 ways this Sunday. I could not believe it. The relationship is bleak. Guys, this ain't great for them. Jackie apparently told Marshall that he needed to man up and do grown man stuff, which is very weird, but it kind of goes back to week 1 where Jackie said she usually goes for guys with face tattoos and stuff like that. So maybe she's almost reverting back to her habits. So Marshall leaves, very upset, as any man would be, and stayed at his apartment. Now, do I think that him leaving was a little too reactionary? Yeah, probably, because that gives a mixed message to Jackie, and Jackie even said, like, oh, you're packing your stuff up, I'll pack my stuff up too. So when Marshall comes back to try to have another conversation, it's rough. So Jackie's packing her stuff, and then they somehow find a way to have a conversation of some sort. But Jackie said that Marshall needs to be more aggressive and that they don't have, and I quote, sex. So here's my thing though. I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, maybe Marshall not wanting to do it before the wedding. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, you know? Why is there anything wrong with that? But it seems like, again, Jackie's reverting to her habits, because when you don't know what to do, you do your habits. And it seems like Jackie's kind of up in the air about everything. She's unsure, so she's just reverting back to the kind of guys she used to date. It ain't great. But again, there's lots of secondhand accounts of what's happening here, but you can tell that they're really upset with one another. And then Marshall goes ahead and says something that really ticks off Jackie. He says, Jackie, you don't make me feel special. And then he says one thing that literally knocks the lid off the container, y'all. Marshall said something that I'm pretty sure he'll regret when he watches this back. He tells Jackie, I see you as a project. Homie, that's on like the top 5 list of things you never want to say in an argument ever, or about your spouse ever. Like, what are we doing here? Why are you calling your fiance a project? Really? But yeah, he eventually apologized in a roundabout way, and then Jackie hugged Marshall, said I'm sorry. They hugged it out, but y'all, this is a lot. My head was spinning, bro. Whew, Lord. So yeah, guys, Jackie and Marshall, their relationship's on the rocks, and we got one more Jackie Marshall situation to talk about later on in this discussion. So now let's talk about another couple here. We got Kwame and Chelsea. Or do we? In retrospect, after watching episodes 6 through 8, Kwame's been planting a lot of clues, letting us know that he's maybe a little unsure about Chelsea and their relationship. But alright, let's not be negative, right? And let's get into Kwame meeting Chelsea's dad for the first time. Oh man, Chelsea and him, they're not great with dealing with stress together. It seems like that, honestly. They're very nervous. I mean, that's normal, but like they're getting into some like, you know, shouting matches, you know. It just seems like they're not good at handling stress. But the lower thirds, when they introduced... This was so funny. So Chelsea made sure to tell Kwame that you want to call my dad Charlie, not Charles. So the lower thirds showed Charles instead of Charlie. It's so shady by the producers. But this whole time, they're setting up for this really brutal encounter with Chelsea's dad and Kwame. And hey, it worked out. He was smiling. He was happy. They had dinner. They told stories together. And it worked out. So Charlie said he's happy for his daughter. And all right, things are okay. All peachy, right? Well, sort of. They go to Kwame's apartment. I believe he's living in Portland, Oregon, and Kwame's still hung up on having to move. It seems like he loves his hometown, but there's one thing that he hasn't done yet, and he hasn't told either of his family members about him getting engaged. In particular, he hasn't told his mother, and that I can imagine is a big shock for her, but it's not because he didn't want to tell her. Apparently, it's because his mom didn't pick up and hasn't picked up, but conveniently she picks up for the cameras. We just don't hear the conversation. So eventually we understand, okay, Kwame's mom does not approve. Chelsea's sad about it. Kwame's sad about it. But he's trying to mask his feelings. He's doing a decent job at that. But then there's a moment where he kind of just like breaks character. And you can tell he's genuinely sad. So I feel really bad for Kwame here. But hopefully Kwame's mom turns around if it is if the end result is Chelsea and Kwame are genuinely a good match together. And then a little bit later on down the line in week 2, Kwame said that apparently Chelsea and him are still adjusting and then laughed about it. But it's like the fake laugh where you're, again, masking your feelings. Kwame is sending mixed messages. I think that's what it is, honestly. It's really weird. He says things that are super serious and then does that laugh. I'm like, bruh, we're not going to skirt over that. Like, come on now. You said you're still adjusting together and you're a little unsure about your future, of where you're going to live and, how you're going to get over some things. And then he laughs. I'm like, it wasn't very funny. And then there's a very serious conversation they have after washing Rocky. I believe that's Chelsea's dog's name. And it's about kids and family and maybe enjoying one another before you start a family. Chelsea wants kids right away. She's like, I'm ready to pop them out. Once the pop, the fun don't stop, I guess for her at least. But for Kwame, he brought up a good point. He said that he actually wants to enjoy his, time with Chelsea as a married couple before introducing kids into the picture, at least for the first 3 to 4 years. And I'm like, I can understand where Kwame's coming from to a degree. I can understand why he would want to enjoy his wife and vice versa, Chelsea wanting to enjoy Kwame if that was the case. Their time before bringing a kid into the mix, because you can't really travel the world with a child as easily as you can with your husband and your wife. So I get him. But then he said the whole 3 to 4 years thing, and I'm like, ooh, maybe Kwame doesn't want to have kids at all. And if that's the case, Chelsea's bringing up the red flag and gonna tell him you better walk. Because Chelsea wants kids. And then Kwame really says what's on his mind. It's that he feels he's compromising more than Chelsea is, and Chelsea felt some type of way. And I do feel like the way they're editing their moments together, it is true. It seems like Kwame is compromising a lot more than Chelsea is. And I almost want to hear more on Chelsea's side of things because she is making sort of hints where Kwame, you do this, you do that, or you wore pink, my favorite color. And then he would say things like, oh, anything for you. I'm like, whoa, hold on. That was a very weird offhand comment, the way you delivered it. So, it almost seems like they're starting to go a certain route that is not great for the future of the relationship. I mean, they got to start talking about these things, right? So lastly, let's talk about our newly engaged couple, Zack and Bliss. And again, just got a few points for them because they haven't really been engaged all that long. So Zack is apparently moving in with Bliss after starting a law firm in Seattle. Things are moving very quickly between these two, but Bliss is ready to take her foot off the accelerator and start hitting that brake because Bliss still has reservations about Zack picking her second and her feeling like a second option. Zack gets really defensive and he says things that actually kind of proves Bliss's point. So Zack, -1 for you, homie. Bliss said she feels icky still about feeling like she is that option 2, option B for Zack, and Zack is trying to justify it, saying things like, Bliss, if you were my second option, would you even be here right now? Actually, that's exactly what's happening, Zack. It's because things didn't work out with Arena that you're now engaged to Bliss. So she was the second option. She is the second option, technically. Now, in his heart, he's treating her like number one, but to her, Bliss feels like, I'm still on the fence about all of this. So, like I told you, I would give you my predictions about these engaged couples, but again, we have one more tiny section to talk about, because a former contestant shows up that throws a wrench into the entire machine, sort of. The engaged couples get together at a local restaurant to celebrate Chelsea's birthday, and then things just get turned upside down. This was actually the moment where Kwame told Chelsea, after Chelsea made the comment about, you wore my favorite color, you knew to wear my favorite color, and then Kwame said, I'm glad it came out the way you wanted, like his outfit. So, a little bit of shade there. But you know who shows up? Josh. You remember Josh? The turtleneck lover, not fighter? The one that, basically him and Marshall had a little spat, and then he just walks and Jackie picks Marshall. But Josh is at the party. First of all, producers, y'all are messy. You know what you're doing here. And second of all, Chelsea was shocked. Chelsea's like, what is he doing here? Girl, it's your birthday. You didn't know who was coming to your birthday? I know it could be like a surprise thing, but if you're not even friends with Josh, why is he at your birthday? I guess the producers were like, I guess the party invitation list is blind. So I thought it was very interesting though, because Jackie and Marshall are having a little bit of a tough time right now, and Marshall shows up to the party alone. Everyone's all, oh my gosh, he's alone. And then Jackie shows up later, and Marshall, her trying to have conversations. You could just tell it ain't great. You know what I mean? So Brett's talking to Marshall, and all the while Amber shows up. So that also makes Paul think like, oh my gosh, like Amber is here. But Amber is very clearly not looking like she's trying to pursue Paul, but Paul, even if that happened, is like all up on Micah. Like, this is my girl, it's my fiance. But I'm like, homie, are you kind of like overcompensating a little bit? Because you made that comment at Mexico that you were still thinking about Amber a little bit. So we'll see. All the while, Kwame is questioning his relationship with Chelsea, saying that Micah still has a special place in his heart. Now listen, at this point in the episode, the alcohol is a-flowing, alright? Things are going crazy. Tequila, whatever, vodka, whatever you're drinking is getting into your system. Everyone sounds drunk at this point. Well, almost everyone. Jackie didn't, Marshall didn't, and neither did Brett. But Kwame did sound like he was favoring the bottle a little bit, and Josh was, of course, wiping the floor with alcohol. The man is just a mess. He's a hot mess. He can't even put together proper sentences. He did give us some funny faces. I'm not going to lie, his reactions were kind of hilarious. But he's going to try to home wreck Jackie and Marshall's relationship. And we know it's coming because Jackie sat down and Josh conveniently pulls up next to her and says in a very incoherent thought, essentially this: if you're going to marry Marshall, pick him. If you're not going to pick Marshall, if you're not, then you need to pick me. You can tell Jackie's not feeling Josh. You can tell Jackie's probably not feeling Marshall. So why do I have this sinking feeling that Jackie's probably going to walk out that party with no one next to her? I don't know. It's my thought here. So now we're at this section because that's the end of the episode, y'all. I mean, that party was nuts, okay? Like, you could just tell Marshall wants to knock out Josh, but he's reserving himself. He's a lover, not a fighter. But Josh is a mess, bro. This whole thing is a mess. Everything is a mess at this point in the episode. But it's time for my predictions, okay? Because I told y'all last week, Brett and Tiffany, I believe they're going to make it. All right, they're the number one couple, and I still believe that after this week, the relationship is more mature, grounded after this week. You can tell that they are going to hopefully make it. And then who else do I think is going to make it? Scrolling. No one else is going to make it, guys. I'm sorry. I hate to be negative. I'm not trying to be negative, but based on what I'm seeing, I don't think it happens. But I'll tell you if I'm really confident or slightly confident that it won't happen. I do think Micah and Paul have a slim chance. I think they have a chance, but after what Micah's friends said and what Micah's mom said, it doesn't seem likely, unfortunately. Jackie and Marshall are absolutely not going to make it anymore. Like 0% chance. And it sucks to say that because I was rooting for them, but 0% chance. And I don't want to blame either or because it takes two to tango. But in this instance, I think Jackie's self-sabotaging. It's on her. You know, and she's got to figure some stuff out before she can get into a serious relationship. And I do feel bad for Marshall, But also Marshall needs to be a little bit better with his choice of words and be less reactionary and be more proactive about certain things. And then you got Kwame and Chelsea. That ain't working out. Not at all. No, 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 ma'am. I think Chelsea is not compromising as much as Kwame. Kwame feels that. Part of me does feel like Chelsea, in a sense, has a very controlling nature about her, and Kwame likes his independence a little too much. So Kwame is trying, but I don't think it's going to work out between them two. And Zack and Bliss, I think it's going to be Bliss who says no at the altar. I kid you not. I don't think it's going to be Zack. Zack's going to say yes, 100 times over yes, and he's going to have his Shane moment, and then Bliss is going to say no, because I'm the second option. I can't go through with this in good faith. She might not even make it down the altar, y'all. Knowing Bliss, she seems to be a very prideful person in a sense. So I don't think that she will go through with it, but Zack will of course want to. So there you have it, y'all. That's my real review and recap. Those are all my spoiler-filled thoughts on episodes 6 through 8 of Love is Blind Season 4. Again, let me know down below what you think of this week's set of episodes. Who do you think survived and who do you think doesn't? And if you made it this far, y'all, hit the big red button below. Subscribe to the channel because you're a part of the real family now. We got more Love is Blind to talk about next Friday. Episodes 9 through 11. You guys know that's going to probably be the most dramatic week of this show. You know something's crazy is going to go down, and I can't wait for it. So we'll be right back here on the channel talking about it next Friday. I can't wait. Alrighty, y'all. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Oh, man. What am I going to be wrong about next week?